Hey everyone, I know that it's been quite a little while since the last build or video altogether, but to be totally honest, nothing has felt quite as fun to play until this character. So I spent an ungodly amount of time trying to squeeze as much damage out of this build as possible. Hence why my lateness to my own channel. Anyhow, tonight's build is an Elementalist Physical Lightning Wonder. More specifically, we use Power Siphon as both the clear and DPS skill. We are also using Inpulsa's Broken Heart, since you know the new Elementalist can guarantee shocks and it makes the most sense in this character. Now I chose to make this because thanks to the magic of Harvest, I was able to brute force my way into a 360 physical DPS wand in a single afternoon. Originally I wanted to do an Impale Wonder with it, but since we've done some of those in the past, I figured an elemental conversion was a fresh take on the concept. And at the same time, the new Elementalist with her guaranteed shocks with an Inpulsa's Broken Heart, while converting all physical damage to lightning made more sense, you know? However, there are some caveats. We need great gear to get this going, and to be quite honest, you're probably gonna get a lot of mileage out of it if you craft a lot of that gear instead of trading for it, either via Harvest or by spamming fossils or essences or chaos orbs or whatever. Though do expect to spend a hefty chunk of currency because we are also using an obscure amount of gear in here. But that's the fun part, right? And as you'll see, there is a lot of room for constant upgrades, and the more you can cram into the build, the higher the numbers go, and the funner this gets. Now, I am fully aware of the int stacking lightning only wanding playstyle that has gotten a lot of attention lately. But this one is a bit simpler. At the end of the day, we are building around a physical DPS wand that happens to lend itself to conversion. It is going to be cheaper than stacking intelligence everywhere, but it's also going to provide its own set of unique challenges that we'll be going over as the build guide progresses. But with all of that said, hey, if you are new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel, otherwise a rating and a comment are always appreciated. Anyways, let's move on to the gear, because those numbers aren't gonna go up by themselves. Alright fellas, you all know the drill. In a build like this, the weapon is always the backbone. We need a relatively thick wand, and it also needs crit multi amongst the suffixes. And a wand like mine can be gambled through Harvest. It is how I crafted it. It is a bit of a long process, and be sure to check the pinned comment for the crafting process I went through with mine, otherwise we'd be here for half an hour. Moving on, the body armor is an Inpulsa's Broken Heart. This is because we are shocking everything we touch thanks to the Ascendancy, and we get to pop shocked enemies we kill, while also getting damage after shocking enemies. At the same time, I will advise trying to get a corrupted Inpulsas with either +1 level of Sacred Gems or +2 level of Sacred Projectile Gems, as that is going to give you a lot more damage. But at the end of the day, that is also more currency to spend, so that is up to you. Moving on to the helmet, it is a crown of the inward eye with Power Siphon fires 2 additional projectiles. This helmet is mandatory because alongside Wand's Linger on the tree, it is going to give us a hefty chunk of damage. Otherwise, a rare or another unique could work, but you'd need to change some things on the skill tree. The gloves have the incursion suffix, lightning resistance and crit chance against shocked enemies, alongside another resistance, strength, life and fist to lightning bench crafted on them. Now, if you are ballsy enough, you'd slam a Warlord Exile hoping for either projectile damage or spell damage for more DPS. The belt is a Crusader influenced Stygian bias with life, lightning damage or elemental damage with attack skills, crit chance against shocked enemies and resistances. The jewel on the belt has life, crit chance, crit multi and other stuff that you can cram into it. That Stygian bias was crafted through Harvest, and I will advise doing the exact same thing, you know, to keep the belt relatively cheap. For the boots, we are gonna need to Awakener Slam, Tailwind on critical strike and chance to dodge spell hits. After that is done, we need to clear the prefixes through Harvest or the crafting bench and force life, movement speed and slam a crit modifier for a guaranteed elusive on crit. Boots like this are mandatory because we are gonna be using dodge as a defensive layer, and without elusive or dispel dodge, this is going to feel terrible until you are able to fix that chance to avoid taking damage. Plus, Tailwind is a nice DPS bump too, so I will advise no alternatives here. Also, either resistance penetration or lightning damage if we haven't killed recently as the enchantment choices. Moving on to the shield, we want life, either 2 minimum endurance charges or frenzy charges, resistances, strength and both spell damage and lightning damage as extra chaos. This shield over here is hella obscure, but thanks to Wand's Linger and our overall lightning damage, it provides a massive DPS bump that should not be slept on. Now for the amulet we want life, crit multi, spell damage, Physa's extra lightning, and we are also bench crafting either a frenzy or endurance charge. We also anoint Constitution for some life, however I beast crafted aspect of the spider, but that one can go anywhere you have an open suffix, but the aspect is mandatory. The first ring has elemental weakness or conductivity on hit alongside life, resistances, and another frenzy or endurance charge bench crafted on it, while the other ring has onslaught on hit as the implicit, life, resistances, another frenzy or endurance, and either fist damage or lightning damage to attacks. Finally for flasks at Series Promise, a Wise Oak and either a Diamond Flask or a Bottle Faith. Unfortunately, Dying Sun barely does anything for us, so we don't get to cram it in our Gatorade picks today. Before moving on to the skill tree, yes, a lot of this gear seems and is expensive. Expect to spend currency crafting or acquiring that gear. Our biggest crafting challenges are the wand, the boots, the belt and the shield. Everything else can be acquired relatively easily, but those 4 are a bit complicated to nail down. Also, Harvest helps immensely, either by farming the crafts yourself or using the Forbidden Trove Discord to get the stuff you need. But remember, it's all a gamble, so here's to hoping RNG doesn't screw you over, because that ain't fun. But with all of that said, let's talk about the skill tree. Alright, so this is a level 95 Elementalist. We sided with Alira for resistances and crit multi, and for Pantheons, Brine King is kinda mandatory to not get chain stunned, cause we are not immune to that crap. But for lesser gods, Shakari or Tukohama depending on the situation are my picks. For the Ascendancy, first we get Shaper of Storms for the guaranteed shock and shock bonuses. Then we move towards the Golem nodes to get Elemental Ailment immunity and damage. And finally we get Mastermind of Discord to apply extra negative resistances to enemies through Wave of Conviction. As for the skill tree itself, we are gonna start by taking the intelligence related nodes in the witch area. And we do this because wands require a hefty chunk of brain size, and if we rush towards point blank first, we are gonna have problems equipping our weapon for a long while. So we are gonna start by grabbing Throat Seeker and Wand Slinger first. Then the extra golem, power charge, life and prism weave through the right side for the penetration nodes. Then we want fusillade and disintegration, while also starting our road to the right side of the tree towards point blank. We are grabbing crit stuff on the shadow area, life, dodge stuff, more crit, more life, a single point into mana leech, command of the elements, and another life cluster on the way to grabbing point blank. After all of that is done, we want a Cluster Jewel socket. It is going to house an 8 passive large Cluster Jewel with Feed the Fury, Storm's Hand and Heavy Hitter. However, Heavy Hitter is not getting allocated because we only want 5 passives here, including the Jewel sockets. From there we want to allocate Pain Attunement and the Jewel socket nearby to it in order to turn it into Chainbreaker through a Lethal Pride. As always, this is to generate rage passively, and the whole reason is to trigger Berserk for a quick DPS burst during boss fights. Afterwards, we grab Arcing Blows for lightning goodies, the Jewel sockets, and Elder Power as the last 2 nodes. We also use a Watcher's Eye with Physa's extra lightning while affected by Wrath, and crit multi while affected by Precision. But lightning penetration with Wrath and attack speed or attack damage with Precision are good options too. The rest of the jewels have increased maximum life, attack speed and crit multi. But if you can get things like projectile damage, global fist damage, spell damage or other damage modifiers, that is also good. But that is it for the skill tree, which is a bit stretched out, but it's the most optimal route that we can take. Level 95 is mandatory to get as much damage and life as possible on this otherwise scuffed route. But with all of that said, let's wrap this up with the gem setups. In the body armor, Power Siphon, Inspiration, Awakened Elemental Damage with attack skills, Barrage Support, Physical to Lightning and Awakened added Lightning Damage. This is our DPS setup. To clear maps, we use another Power Siphon setup with Fist to Lightning, Inspiration and Pierce. In the helmet, the golems, Ice, Chaos, Lightning and Flame, though if you could get anomalous versions of the golems that would be great. In the gloves, Precision and Wrath linked to Enlighten, while also having Flame Dash chilling here. In the shield, Wave of Conviction linked to Spell Totem, and in the weapon, Berserk and a Portal Gem if you want it. And with all of that said and done, let's talk some closing thoughts. This build is really fun to play thanks to the Elementalist rework of 3.13. The guaranteed shocks and shock effect alongside the extra exposure effect really stand out for me, though those golems provide both a DPS and defensive layer I was not expecting to like. Everything in this build synergizes one way or the other. You've seen it throughout the video, the damage is respectable. Though, being totally honest, I actually believe that this may be my strongest Wander build yet. Hell, I'd even claim it's the most fun Wander I've done so far. And it has the possibility of going even higher, but that will require a better wand and borderline perfect min-maxed gear, which is possible through the use of Harvest, but at the point where I live with this one, I think that's more than enough. Defenses wise, you all know the drill. It's a coin toss. Dodge and evasion are good until they don't roll favorable results. We are gonna help them a bit through the use of elusive and dodge mods on the boots. Thanks to the endurance charges and the chaos golem getting beefed up by the other golems, we can take some hits here and there. Though take that with a grain of salt and try to avoid everything that you can. Again, as I said previously, this is going to be expensive. This build requires currency to craft and acquire gear. Obviously, I'd recommend using Harvest as much as you can, and you may even have to dabble in the Forbidden Trove Discord to force the stuff that you need, but in my opinion it is worth in the long run. I am aware that int stacking wanding is way stronger than my version, but I wanted something relatively simple. You know, Fist Conversion, Elementalist, Inpulsa, Shock and Go, and I got what I wanted and hopefully you too if you play this build, which I recommend that you do, but yeah, that is gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching tonight's video. Don't forget to subscribe if you are new around here. Take care, have a nice weekend, and be sure to tune in next time where hopefully it doesn't take me an entire week of tasting weird ideas to make a video. Peace out.
Pain will be returned tenfold. Space aligns. Behold my collection.
I will have what I want. Death will not be an escape. Scurry.
When I'm ready and not before.
Death made real.
Stand still. A cascade of pain. Stand still.
Death made real.
A cascade of pain. Stand still. A cascade of pain. Why?
Resistance will be punished. Time contorts. Scurry, scurry. The most beloved.
I like you better this way.
My irritation is growing. This will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry.
Death made real.
Stand still.
resisting. Reality bends. Punishment inescapable.
Arrogant toy! This will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry! Take this. A cascade of pain. Stand still. A cascade of pain. Take this.
I've been hurt.